Our MC easily beat the living crap out of Crimson Reaper, a beast in a human skin who tears men apart with just his bare hands. To show how much of the difference and power gap between them, he easily grabs him by his neck and chokeslam him into the ground so hard that you can hear the sound through the screen. Without giving him a chance, our MC uses his single skill, Lightning Roar, and burns his body to ashes. Well, there's a reason why he can easily defeat that beast. Let's go back to the beginning. The Fist King was a title given to a man who subjugated the entire Jianghu clan with only his bare fists. One night, Dan Wusong, the Fist King, gets ambushed by a group of mysterious individuals, but being as powerful as he is, he takes most of them down. He then notices two other opponents, who clearly look stronger than the side characters he just soloed. Advancing towards them, he spots a symbol on one of their swords that helps him identify them as being from the demonic faction. While the first opponent approaches, Wusong makes up his mind that he'll end him with only 10 attacks. But for some reason, when he gets to the 9th swing, he realizes that he has been weakened. That's when he notices the involvement of the other individual. Before he can react, he gets stabbed and passes out instantly. He got careless. Waking up in a strange environment, Wusong wonders if someone had treated him before he passed away. Wusong immediately checks his chest but is surprised to find it unscarred, making the whole situation seem strange. That's when he notices a young woman by his side who has apparently been calling out to him the whole time, referring to him as First Young Master. When she fetches him some water to drink, he notices something odd about his reflection in a nearby mirror. For some reason, he can't seem to identify the individual staring back at him from the mirror. Snapping into reality, Wusong immediately starts to freak out, pulling the skin on his face as if it were a mask. Watching her young master's unusual display of madness, the servant rushes out immediately to call the physician to check up on him. When she leaves, Wusong tries to understand what exactly has happened to him. He wonders if it could have been the demonic faction's doing, but concludes that it's way beyond them. If at all they possessed that kind of power, they would have used it to take full control over the Jianghu clan long ago. He decides to get down from the bed to try to identify whose identity he now possesses, but crumbles to his feet immediately. That's when he realizes how weak his current body is. Not relenting, he struggles till he gets to a desk at the far end of the room. Settling down, he notices a bunch of letters addressed to Li Jin-eon, the eldest son of a very wealthy merchant. The whole incident then becomes clear to him. He has been reincarnated. Suddenly, an old man bursts into the room, and Wusong immediately identifies him as the physician. Gongsun, the physician, embraces him, showing his deep concern, but Wusong assures him that he's fine. The physician then summons some servants in to serve Wusong his usual meal. When he sees the food, he immediately identifies it as the dragon and phoenix soup, which, although it might be great for healthy people, it's as good as poison to someone as sick as Li Jin-eon. Wusong then realizes that something is off with the physician. He speculates that the physician found it weird to learn that Jin-eon was more energetic, and that was why he rushed over to confirm. Gongsun remarks that the food is perfectly healthy for Wusong and will make him as strong as the men who participate in the Dragon Phoenix martial competition, proving his sly character to Wusong. Wusong immediately asks how long the competition has been on for, and Gongsun answers that it has been on for 200 years. Wusong then tells the physician he doesn't have an appetite as he sends him out of the room. Now, realizing that since it's just time for the 200th Dragon Phoenix martial competition, only a little time has passed since he died. He sees it as a good opportunity to not only take revenge on the demonic faction, but also the sly physician, who had been keeping Li Jin-eon bedridden. This time, he decides that he's going to take them all down with a single punch. A couple of days later, since Jin-eon has specifically been off his Dragon Phoenix soup diet, he has started to feel way healthier, and all the servants acknowledge it. One morning, when he comes back from his morning walk, he gets served a healthy breakfast and settles down to eat. Suddenly, Gongsun arrives at his chamber, trying to act way too familiar. Jin-eon then comes up with an idea to try to expose his actions. He asks the old man why he decided to stop by, and Gongsun replies that he has not seen him for a while and simply just wanted to know how he's doing. He then lays out a bunch of flattery compliments, relating them to his efforts in taking care of him. Triggered, Jin-eon pauses immediately and points out that he's aware of what the old man has been trying to do to him with the constant consumption of the Dragon Phoenix soup. Gongsun gets completely shocked upon hearing the accusations. He immediately tries to defend himself, stating that the soup is simply a nourishing tonic, but Jin-eon calls out his bluff. Gongsun then pretends to get upset by the accusations and tries to excuse himself, but Jin-eon stops him, telling him how rude it is for him to leave when his master has yet to dismiss him. Jin-eon orders the old man to fetch some writing tools and start writing what he dictates. With Gongsun writing, he begins the content of the letter by requesting more time in the villa. Next, he remarks about how stubbornly long his life is. As he says the words, he notices how the old man freezes completely. When Gongsun asks what he's talking about, he then reveals all his findings about the physician's secret agenda to unalive him. Since he knows the physician must simply be acting on orders, he orders him to write down the name of the person who ordered him in the letter. Gongsun first tries to deny the accusations, but seeing how serious the young master is, he quits pretending and reveals his true colors. He calls Jinyeon a dimwit for being too cocky, and states that he's now going to have to unalive all the servants in the chamber for his foolishness. Jinyeon immediately loses his patience and strikes the old man on the head, causing him to pass out immediately. As a result of the attack, Jinyeon's hand gets swollen. He remarks to himself that his body is still too weak and that he has to make sure he recovers quickly. He believes that when he's fully recovered, it won't matter if the enemy he's dealing with is an entire organization, as he'll take them all down single-handedly. All of a sudden, he gets a splitting headache, which makes him lose his balance. His eyes then begin to tear up as loads of memories flood his mind. From the memories, he understands the whole history of Lee Jinyeon. Jinyeon, being the first son of the Una merchant group, was neither as smart as his second brother nor as strong as his third brother. He had tried so hard to compensate for what he lacked with money, but only ended up indulging in a depraved life of pleasure. By the time he realized his mistakes and turned back, it was already too late. Since he had neglected his health for a long time, he was sent to the villa to get treatment. With full memories of his current body, Jinyeon figures out that his family wouldn't even care about his place of exile, so he decides to use it as an opportunity to focus on martial arts. Since his body is still in a terrible condition, Jinyeon decides that to get it to a high level, he'd have to incorporate knowledge from his past life with a couple of rare elixirs into his training. It's a good thing he happened to be reincarnated as a wealthy person, so getting a couple of elixirs shouldn't be a problem for someone of his status. 1 year later, Inseop, Auna's merchant group's guard squad, arrives at the villa with a letter to deliver directly to Jinyeon. When he meets the young master, he's in uttermost shock to see how much he has changed. In the few seasons that passed, Jinyeon's energy core manifested greatly, and he engraved all the martial arts required for survival into his body. The different martial arts include the Enlightened Mobility art, the Enlightened Body art, the Rapid Stride, and the White Lightning 10-phase art, which allows him to control lightning. With his rigorous training, he has now reached the 4th phase, which is far above average in martial arts. But even with his rapid growth, he still feels like he's not strong enough. When the guard arrives and delivers the letter, he wonders if this is really the same young master he knew, as Jinyeon used to be so frail. From the content of the letter, Jinyeon finds out that his father is now bedridden. He asks Inseop what could have likely caused it, and Inseop likens it to the handiwork of the Uyang clan. The Uyang clan is a clan that the Yunha merchant group has been paying tribute to under the pretext of protection fees for a while now. They had raised the fees unreasonably, making it difficult for even the wealthy group to keep up with them. Sadly enough, the group's guards couldn't even protest because of the kind of group they're dealing with. The name Uyang rings a bell in Jinyeon's head, and he realizes that he must have been strong enough for someone like him to have known of him. Jinyeon remarks that to resolve the whole problem, all he has to do is take down the entire clan, surprising Inseop completely. Inseop adds that there's another reason behind the leader's sudden collapse. He tells him about a sword fight the second and third young masters partook in before their father, driving him to collapse from anger. Jinyeon decides that he can't just sit back and wait for his father to recover. He orders the guard to go back and report that he'll be coming back home. When Inseop arrives back at the Yuna merchant group's palace, he tells the other guards about how much the first young master has changed, but none of them believe him. Each of them makes offensive comments about how he will always be a good-for-nothing. Han Yop, the guard squad's vice captain, however, seems rather intrigued about Inseop's claims about the first young master being a martial artist. He recalls that Jinyeon had always had a fine physique since he was a child, but never knew how to use it. Suddenly, Jinyeon's arrival is announced. While the majority of the guards don't see the need to welcome a well-known loser like him, the vice captain orders them to give him a grand welcome. Meanwhile, while Jinyeon advances into the palace, he wonders why he's not being welcomed. He then shortly gets approached by the guards who salute his arrival.
The vice captain bows to welcome him back to the palace while the rest of the guards cringe at the idea, given how terribly the young master had treated them in the past. To their surprise, rather than the usual insults, Jinyeon appreciates them for welcoming him back, making the guards remark that he has indeed changed. While Han Yop leads him to his father's chamber, Jinyeon runs into Jaeyeon, his alleged younger brother and the third son. Since Jaeyeon is fond of bullying his brother for being so weak, Han Yop tries to interfere, but Jaeyeon doesn't take his interference lightly. He smacks him hard across the face, telling him to know his place. He tries to teach the vice captain a lesson for daring to lay hands on him, but Jinyeon can't take his rudeness anymore. He slaps some sense into his brother immediately. He then squeezes his shoulder so hard that Jaeyeon gets on his knees. Jaeyeon yells loudly at him, calling him a bastard, but Jinyeon gets excited instead, remarking that he might have to teach his little brother some well-deserved manners. Meanwhile, while Hwa-eon, the second son, takes a stroll through the mansion, he notices the commotion from a distance. Confronting one of the guards, he finds out that his brother has returned and has gotten into a squabble with his younger brother.
He immediately assumes that Jaeyeon is bullying Jinyeon again, like the old times, so he rushes over to the scene to stop the fight. To his surprise, when he gets there, he is in utmost disbelief to see Jinyeon knocking some sense into Jaeyeon for the very first time. With Jaeyeon serving severe punishment for his rude behavior, the brothers share a brief reunion. When Jinyeon notices an injury on Hwaeon's hand, which he most likely sustained from his clash with Jaeyeon, he increases the punishment, forcing their little brother to apologize. The brothers are both shocked at Jinyeon's sudden character development. Jinyeon finds a scroll containing a list of employees who would be attending an upcoming conference meeting the following day. When he goes through it, he finds Gong Sun, the shady physician's name, written boldly in the list. He then puts all his hints together and concludes that the person responsible for the sketchy setup against him at the villa must have been none other than Young-hoo. Jinyeon interrogates his brothers seriously to find out if any of them is secretly working with Young-hoo. But they're completely blown away at the fact that he even considered that as an option. They explain that they know the amount of struggle their father put into the group and would never do anything to let it go to waste. When he confirms that they're telling the truth, Jinyeon tells them his intention to attend the conference meeting as well. He then heads into their father's room. When he approaches his father on his sickbed, the old man embraces him warmly, remarking how much healthier he looks now. In Jinyeon's previous life, he wasn't fortunate enough to grow up with parents, but with Jinyeon's memories, he feels the huge role the old man has played in his life. When the old man explains how his body can't keep up with the level of stress he's facing, Jinyeon assures him, while smiling mischievously, that he will take care of the cause of stress in his life. The old man gets sudden chills from his son's weird smile. The following day at the conference meeting, while Hwaeon gives a speech, Young-hoo notices Jinyeon's unusual attendance. Wondering what could have brought him to attend, he concludes that Jinyeon is probably worried about his position in the group. Feeling cocky, he decides to push his buttons by interrupting the meeting for a suggestion. He suggests that since Jinyeon doesn't have a personal guard, he would like to recommend one of his men for him. Apparently, about half of the Eunhwa merchant group guards are already men from the Uyang clan. That's part of his plan to overthrow the entire Eunhwa merchant group, and due to his power, no one dares stand up against him. To his surprise, Jinyeon stands up against him and makes his own suggestion to fire Young-hoo from his position as guard leader. The entire room takes his petition for a bad joke, as they've never witnessed someone stand up to Young-hoo in that manner. Young-hoo remarks that Jinyeon's health conditions might have been what made him think he had the power to stand up against him. Jinyeon smirks and lands a heavy punch on the table before them, shattering it completely. At this point, the entire room goes silent. Jinyeon then boldly states in return that Young-hoo must have forgotten his place just because he happened to gain some influence. He boldly declares that the Eunhwa merchant group belongs to him, and not the other way round. A few minutes before the meeting, Jinyeon had told Hwaeon about his plans to dismiss Young from his position as guard captain. Hwaeon warned him that Young is completely out of their league, but Jinyeon had told him to sit tight and watch his big brother handle it. Now, watching his brother take this kind of destructive approach wasn't something he imagined happening. As a result of Jinyeon's spontaneous attack, the Young guards draw their swords immediately. Seeing how the Young clan guards have drawn their swords against the first young master, the Eunhwa merchant group guards draw their swords against them as well. Jinyeon remarks that indeed they were insolent for daring to draw their swords against their employer, but adds that he'll count it as compensation since he feels slightly bad for ruining Young-hoo's retirement plan. While Young-hoo wonders what he's yapping about, Jinyeon tells him how aware he is of the physician he sent to unalive him when he left to recuperate. He also adds the fact that he had instigated a clash between his brothers to put their father in a terrible state. Hearing this, Young-hoo bursts into laughter, telling him his accusations are false, but Jinyeon isn't having it. He walks up to him and tells him that the very same physician he ordered to unalive him ended up dying by his hand instead. He then goes on to narrate how he had taken him out in only a single strike, noticing how Young-hoo's countenance changes. Still, he doesn't stop there. Jinyeon goes on to tell him he should have worked harder if he truly wanted to devour the merchant group. Agitated, Young-hoo falls for the rage bait and charges at Jinyeon with a powerful attack. Jinyeon, who has been waiting for this moment, retaliates and blocks the attack easily to everyone's shock. Jinyeon teases him, asking if it's even okay for Young to attack him, who has just finished recuperating. He then uses the opportunity to challenge him to an official duel. As expected, Young-hoo takes the bait and accepts the challenge. But Jinyeon doesn't stop there. He declares that rather than a casual duel, he proposes a life or death battle. Young-hoo commends his boldness and acknowledges his skill, but remarks that he still lacks experience as he lunges towards him with a deadly attack. Jinyeon gets insulted by his claim, so he evades his attack easily and punches him across the room, telling him he's way too cocky to be lecturing him about experience. He then locks in and decides to show the cocky captain a bit of his true power. Jinyeon uses his enlightened mobility art, incorporated with some lightning attacks, to lunge himself towards Young-hoo. Young-hoo manages to block the attack, but Jinyeon keeps coming at him with more powerful attacks. He's then forced to admit that he doesn't move like a novice, but like a seasoned martial master. Still determined not to lose, Uyang-hoo decides to use his trump card, a 3-form sword art, which is known for finishing off all his opponents in a single swing. He charges at Jinyeon with the attack, but Jinyeon evades it easily and uses his rapid stride to finish things off, sending Uyang-hoo crashing through the walls and killing him instantly. The rest of the Uyang clan guards rush to pick up their master's lifeless body in shock. They testify that indeed the duel had no irregularities, but state that if the Uyang clan continues to demand revenge through duels, the Unha merchant group will have no way to avoid them. To their shock, Jinyeon agrees, stating that he never intended to avoid them in the first place. However, he declares that any grudge the entire clan might hold against him will be personally handled by him and not the merchant group. Hwa-yeon tries to caution his brother about the risks his claim could pose, but Jinyeon has made up his mind. He fires the entire Uyang clan on the spot and sends them out. When they leave, Insop cheers the young master for his bravery, but the other guards caution him immediately. They state that rather than celebrating, they should be ashamed as none of them in the guard squad was bold enough to take a stand against the oppressors all this time. In the aftermath, Jinyeon orders Hwa-yeon to buy him an elixir because even though he has declared that he'll be taking responsibility, he still needs support. Hwa-yeon agrees immediately. Jinyeon then further states that he has already thought about the replacement for the Uyang guard squad. Meanwhile, in a distant cabin, word about Jinyeon's rapid movement gets reported to a powerful-looking young man.
A few days ago, on the first day of Lee Jinyeon's entry into the Unha merchant group, he noticed the vice captain hadn't eaten and had been working since dawn. Unlike some other guards who slacked off during work hours, so he made up his mind to replace them with a particular group of people in mind.
Days later, Jinyeon goes to the popular gambling house in town, and the regulars who know him as a pushover are shocked to see he's back after not visiting for a long time. This time around, they watch excitedly, hoping to see how much money he'll waste. Jinyeon walks over to the VIP room and harshly tells one of the guards who looks down on him not to touch him. As soon as he walks into the room, he sees Chul Myung-ho with 2 brothers named Yuk Jinbo and Yuk Mungbo waiting for him. Chul scolds his guards for not welcoming Jinyeon properly, and he calls Jin his friend whom they should show more concern for. Jin, on the other hand, internally admits that they were childhood friends, even though he was constantly bullied and exploited financially. Either they weren't friends, or the very definition means something else to Chul. Chul gets straight to business by asking Jin if he has been itching to gamble after all. His earlier ill health prevented him from doing so. In reality, Chul was the one itching because he had nobody to push around and suck money from. Currently, Chul talks about celebrating him, but Jin silently looks at him. Pissed, Chul asks him what's on his mind, and Jin tells him he's been thinking. Deep down, he thinks of whether to let Chul live or not. What Jin is mostly concerned about are Chul's guards, who he feels are too good to rot under Chul. With that, he makes up his mind and asks Chul to give him the vault key. Confused, Chul asks him what he's talking about and if he needs money. Jin then explains that he'll take cash for the time being, and he's ready to collect the huge amount of money he was forced to invest in the gambling den. Also, he would like to collect the extorted money and his medical treatment costs incurred when he got beaten up by Chul. Jin does the estimation and arrives at 100,000 Nayang coins. After hearing him out, Chul bursts out laughing, saying Jin has learned a bit of arithmetic while recuperating. He calls Jin crazy by saying the vault houses more than just the fee he demanded, and he can't give him the key. He points at the vault and tells Jin there's nothing for him in there. Chul continues his rant, saying Jin should have just asked him to lend him some money. But after seeing Jin ignore him once more, he gets mad and yells at him to get a grip. He tries to intimidate Jin, but after noticing the latter isn't reacting, he orders his guards to pin Jin to the ground and beat him up. One of them grabs Jin as instructed, but immediately realizes that something is wrong. Jin finally speaks to Chul by saying he went out of trouble to show him kindness. With one move, he grabs the guard and sends him crashing into a nearby door. The other one rushes to strike a hit, but Jin ducks and strikes him on the feet, breaking the guard's ankle in the process. He looks back at the men and, to his surprise, he sees them getting back on their feet and calls them the real deal. Despite the pain these guards feel after having their joints broken, they charge at him to land a hit. But he instantly vanishes and appears right behind them. Jin then holds the twins and slams their heads together, saying they should stay put and he won't warn them twice. The men collapse to the floor and he smiles at Chul, saying he's the only one left. Chul starts sweating buckets after realizing he's messed with the wrong person. Jin claps as he slowly approaches Chul. Chul, on the other hand, complains because Jin didn't mention earlier that he learnt martial arts while recovering. Jin gets amused while watching Chul act differently from his usual cocky behavior. Suddenly, the bully brings out a knife while trying to gain some distance between them. He then yells at Jin not to come any closer and asks him to talk things out. In that moment, Chul has a change of heart as he recalls Jin being a pushover. So he summons his courage and dashes at him with the knife while shouting, "First strike wins." Before he can process what's going on, a table slams into his face, and Jin breaks it into pieces before grabbing his hair. With that, he tells Chul that the second stroke wins and zaps him with an enormous amount of high voltage that the guards outside cower in fear. Back inside, Jin drops the bully to the floor and then tells him to snap out of it. Chul, who struggles to catch his breath, wonders what sort of training Jin went through during recovery and even wonders if Jin simply faked his illness for some alone time to train secretly. His mind goes through a lot of things, and he hopes Jin didn't train just for the sake of revenge. Since Chul isn't a very bright person, he concludes it must be the latter, so he sucks up and tries acting warm and friendly to Jin. He asks Jin if he needs anything besides the vault key and offers to help him out by claiming they've been friends since they were kids, and they always shared a special bond. Jin then decides to play along by admitting they were friends, and Chul quickly hugs him, vowing never to beat him up or shake him down again. Chul even says they are brothers and even tells the twins to treat Jin with respect and congratulate him on his new look. They do as they are told, and Chul secretly mocks Jin, calling him a fool who wags his tail at anyone who acts like his friend. He plans to escape with the twins once he fools Jin, believing he can easily start over with them by his side. To his surprise, Jin speaks to the twins and tells them that once they call someone their sworn brother, it's for life. They stare at Chul for validation, and Chul agrees, saying that they are all brothers. After getting their validation, they vow to serve Jin as well. With things going according to Jin's plan, he tells the twins that they have to pick the eldest brother among everyone in the room, so he tells them to wait outside while he and Chul decide. Chul realizes that things are going off track, and he watches as the twins leave him alone with Jin. Jin then tells him that they have to decide quickly, and that's when Chul realizes that Jin was never after the vault money. Jin confirms his suspicions by saying he'll lead the brothers and train them properly from that moment. Chul, on the other hand, who knows he's finished without the twins, tells Jin to take all his money instead. He complains about how suddenly Jin came back, thrashed him, and now wants to take his source of protection. He yells at Jin to unalive him, since there's no point in living without the twins. Jin then decides to teach him a lesson by dishing out blows. Jin pummels him with his fists, which gets Chul realizing he's near death's door. Chul mutters under his breath for Jin to end him, but when Jin raises his fist one more time, Chul yells at him not to unalive him and promises to give him the key. Jin then asks him if that's how to beg for his life, but Chul asks a question as a response. So Jin sends him flying out of the room with a roundhouse kick. The twins see him and learn that he has lost. Chul then tells them that henceforth they are to serve Jin as their big brother. He feels so embarrassed and notes that they are better off with Jin than with him in a gambling den. It just hurts him because he's grown attached to them all this time. The men appreciate him for everything, and he looks up, surprised that they didn't argue. After a while, Chul gets up to leave the gambling den, but he encounters lots of people staring at him wickedly. Now that they've realized he isn't walking around with the twins, they surround him, believing they can take him on. Chul yells at them, declaring his name and telling them to come at him if they've got guts. Immediately, the men charge at him to jump him. At that moment, he realizes he's going to die thanks to Jinyeon whooping him earlier. To his surprise, a fist flies ahead of him and knocks everyone away. Chul looks ahead and sees Jin standing before him and calling the mob cowards for choosing to jump Chul now that he's defenseless. He tells everyone to come at him if they want to get to Chul. While at it, he orders his new sworn brothers to grab all the valuables in the den and then leaves with them. Chul can only watch while being humiliated as the one who mollywopped him also defends him from his haters. He then gets up and stutters his way outside. Later that day, the twins follow Jin out of the gambler's den, and they thank him for sparing Chul. He wordlessly watches them and wonders why they followed the loser back then. Based on the rumors, he believed they were sold as slaves or they followed Chul out of fear, when in reality it was none of that. Jin smiles as he notes that reading people's hearts is still hard despite it being his second life. Meanwhile, someone who spies on humans finds it hard to believe that the pushover he used to know has changed. Days pass, and Jaeon whines about how there hasn't been peace in their fief ever since Jin showed up. He recalls Jin coming home days ago with a huge load of money and 2 big guys. While declaring his dislike for his elder brother, a cart suddenly pulls over, and Hwaeon examines the goods in it while directing the servants to carry them properly inside. Ja hurries to his side and asks him what the goods are. Upon learning that they are rare elixirs, he gets excited and asks who would have ordered them. To his surprise, his father tells him he ordered them. They are shocked to see the old man outside, so they caution him due to his health, but he tells them not to worry, and he's getting better. Ja then asks the head of the house what he's going to do with all the elixirs. He remembers Jin asking for only one, so now that they've got tons, he wonders if he'll get his hands on them. Unfortunately for him, the old man tells him they are all for Jin. Ja gets mad and jealous and confronts his dad about it, but the man tells him that one won't be enough to change their fate. Also, it's very little compared to the amount they spent on the Gu family and their lesser immortal sect. What made the purchase successful was that the old man had sent letters to other merchant family heads, telling them about his family's dilemma and how important he needed the elixir. This made them cooperate with him and get him high-quality elixirs. He admits his huge mistake in bringing in Gu Yanghu, so he plans to make up for it. The vice captain commends the geezer, and they all talk about how amazing Jin was in his fight against Gu Yanghu. With a straight face, the old man tells his sons that it's a very great opportunity for him to blow through all the money he's saved up his whole life. Confused, Jaeyeon looks at him like the old man has gone senile. He then snaps at the geezer, asking about his own elixir, but his father looks puzzled and asks Ja if he needs one. After the meeting, Jaeyeon takes out his frustration at the training area. He complains about hearing Jin's name everywhere and wonders why he doesn't get an elixir. While swinging his wooden sword, he asks himself what kind of miraculous encounter Jin had. Speaking of the devil, those as mentioned earlier who ties his feet to a giant boulder bolts past Ja with incredible speed while saying he's out for a walk. Ja watches in amazement as Jin runs so fast with such a heavy load strapped to him. Ja then collapses to the ground after training for a long time. He then mimics Gu Yanghu's final lunge technique and shrinks the distance between himself and the target in replicating the uppercut Jin has given the former captain. While remembering how it happened, Ja says the move doesn't feel like Jin's. Suddenly, Jin calls out to him, asking him what he's been doing, and he gets startled. Jaeyeon cowers in fear while he asks Jin why he's around and not on a walk like he had said. Jin tells him he's done with his reps, and he hands Ja the wooden sword before telling him to try replicating Yanghu's technique once again. Embarrassed that he was being watched, Ja picks up the sword and breaks the target with the thrust attack. He marvels internally, but his brother calls the move a sloppy stab. Pissed, Ja turns around to talk back at Jin, but he sees a fist coming at him, so he instinctively blocks the punch with the sword. Jin then tells him he let his guard down. While narrating how he was able to defeat Yanghu, he strikes Ja once more and tells him that he went on defense after seeing that he had closed the distance between them. As Ja ducks the attack, he tells Jin to time out. He then grabs his sword and charges straight at his big bro with all his resolve, but to his surprise, Jin vanishes from his vision. He then hears Jin's voice right behind him, telling him that when people get backed into a corner, they tend to pull out their best trump card. Jin, who already takes a stance to unleash a serious uppercut with his left fist, stops his attack inches below Jaeyeon's chin. The younger brother quivers as he realizes that he almost died. Jin then tells him that stabbing has a lower hit rate than slashing, and Yanghu's move was a one-strike ending technique, which he had to be cautious about. All Jin did back then was move faster than the attack, and the outcome was decided. He returns the sword to Jaeyeon and notes that his past self wouldn't even give Yanghu time to draw his sword, unlike his current body, which doesn't have half the strength to fight like his prime, which means that he shouldn't even be satisfied with defeating someone like Yanghu. Despite how strong he was in his past life, he still failed to surpass some people, so now he vows to become stronger than before. While Jin broods and puts on a serious expression, one of his servants shows up to inform him that he has visitors. Before going, he flicks his little brother's head and then realizes who the visitors are. Outside the waiting room, Gu-ong, who was the one who spotted Jin leaving the gambler's den earlier, tells Jujaryang and Sima-guk that he had spotted Jin when he was drunk. They refuse to believe him, so they enter the room, and to their surprise, they see two huge guards and Jin looking like he took steroids for a living. They immediately shut the door, yelling at the servants to confirm if what they saw was the real deal. They struggle to process what they've just seen, as they always remembered Jin to act like a twig. Suddenly, the door slides open, and they freak out upon seeing Jin up close. He then orders the servant to take the twins to the dining hall and give them big dishes. After the huge men leave, Jin calls out to his visitors, asking and signaling to them to come in. The frightened men turn around and inwardly plead for someone to save them. The three men who have habits that one shouldn't be proud of meet with Jinyeon, the fourth member of their group, to confirm that their pushover friend had returned. While they dine together, Jin cringes hard internally as some of the memories he spent with the lowlives flood his head. Without wasting time, his so-called friends interview him, confirming he's all right. They size him up, noting that he's dabbled in martial arts. Curious, they ask him who taught it to him since they heard the rumor that he had used it to beat Gu Yanghu. Jin replies to them that he got lucky in his fight with the former captain, and the goons didn't push further. Jin tells them that the man they once knew is dead, but they look at him like he's crazy. One of them then asks him what his plans are, so he tells them he wants to repay a lot of debts tied to his sex, which means he'll help with the merchant group while preparing for that. He sternly looks at his friends and tells them he isn't interested in anything else except getting stronger. Confused, they stare at each other wordlessly, before whispering if they are at the wrong house or if Jin has a few screws loose. Gook recalls his last meeting with Jin back then, when the latter was ill. Jin had told Gook that he had been exiled elsewhere to recuperate. Gook tried to cheer him up by telling him to use the time to recover and change. Fast forward to the present day, Gook praises him and tells them they should celebrate. Guong, on the other hand, complains, wishing they had kidnapped Jin before the exile. The others argue with him for not showing up to their plans back then. While they argue back and forth, Jin smiles as he realizes that before he reincarnated, the former Jin had real friends. To their surprise, he pours them drinks, saying he has changed. He then asks them if they have, but they brush him off, saying that they aren't the type to change easily. With that, they all have a toast and drink alcohol. One thing rings through their mind, and it's the realization that one of them, whom they thought would always be like them, has finally climbed out of the well where they are stuck. Later that night, they bid him farewell, encouraging him to train harder. As they leave his place, they feel lonely now that the worst of them has leveled up. Rather than head home, the three stooges choose to swing by the sweet-smelling house to continue drinking. There, the sect leader of Little Deity, Yom Jisung, gets mad after hearing the news about the death of Young-hoo. The man learns how one of Yuna's merchant sons easily finished off the strong captain. The guard reporting the case to him tells him that Jin used only his fists to end the captain. Jisung calls Young-hoo a disgrace for being a swordsman who lost to someone with fists. The reporter asks for vengeance, but Jisung tells him they can't. After all, it was a fair duel. Annoyed, the guard asks him if he wasn't friends with the late Young and tries to provoke him. Unfortunately, Jisung lumps off his head with a sword. He then looks down at the dead soldier and asks him who befriends a corpse. He goes back to his seat and orders his men to pack the corpse out of his room. As for Suran, his consort who got scared and sprayed with the soldier's blood, Jisung apologizes to her for startling her and then takes her inside. On the way, he learns that the Yunha merchant group refuses to pay taxes. However, despite being told that he plans to fight them, Jisung tells his men that they aren't gangsters. Coincidentally, Jinyeon's friends walk into the deity sect to drink some wine. Gook, who is still sober, overhears Jisung saying he wants the money of the Yunha merchant group, and how he wonders how much Jin would be worth. Quickly, Gook runs back to Jin's place to inform him of what he heard. Jin, on the other hand, acts like he doesn't care, so Gook tells him how serious the matter is. Jin logically assesses the situation after learning that Jisung and his men are at their base. He then takes Gook to the guard's warehouse. There, he dresses up and throws Gook a cloak, saying he should lead him to the little deity sect's base, and they have to return just in time for breakfast. Shocked, Gook tells him they can't do the whole army, and he logically tries to talk Jinyeon out of it. Unfortunately, logic doesn't work with Jin, and he tells Gook they'll be moving fast, and he should lead the way. Minutes later, they arrive at the deity sect's base and watch the countless number of guards stationed there. After sneaking their way into the place, Gook tells Jin that he is just a piece of baggage and can't help him in battle. Jin thanks him and tells him his job is done, and Gook gets mad at him for treating him as a guide. Still, he asks Jin if he has any plans to get inside since the place is swarming with guards, but Jin simply kicks the door in front of him violently and says he'll do things like he did in his past life. In Jin's past life, he had kept a streak of never backing down from a fight, right from when he was a child. Being a troublesome child, he had gotten through countless fights, both when he was still in the orphanage and when he started making a name for himself in the martial world. Smashing his way into the deity sect's base gives Jin some kind of dopamine he has long been deprived of. When he breaks in, he asks the guards for the sect leader, but they try to apprehend him. Seeing that he now has no choice, he grabs one of them by the throat and makes an example of him to the rest of the guards. A commotion follows, drawing the attention of Jisung and bringing him out of his chamber. Noticing the strange masked man who happens to be the center of the commotion, he asks who he is. Jin answers that he's an assassin and asks if he's the sect leader in return. Jisung confirms his suspicions but wonders what kind of assassin walks in through the front door. Looking at his hands, Jisung notices how brazen they are, so he gets suspicious. Based on the rumors he has been hearing about the skilled first son of the Yuna merchant group, he asks if the young man happens to be Lee Jinyeon by any chance. Surprised at his intuitiveness, Jin wonders why he went through the stress of putting on a disguise in the first place. Jisung immediately orders his men to take Jin down, so Jin is forced to take a few steps back to regroup due to their numbers. He gets nostalgic feelings from his past as the Fist King, remarking that although he's nowhere near as strong as he was in his past life, he's still going to have fun soloing the ops. While the guards charge at him with their full might, Jin takes his time evading their attacks and taking them down easily with just a few average attacks. The guards eventually start to panic, wondering just what kind of monster Jin has to be able to solo them easily with his bare fists. While taking down the guards, Jisung fires a quiet arrow at Jin with his modified bow. Due to the distraction from the fight, Jin doesn't notice it early enough, but he barely manages to evade it as the arrow grazes his cheek. Jisung states that he doesn't like to show off his weapons, but he'll be making an exception for Jin. All of a sudden, two of Jisung's men hold Jin's legs down, aware that they might die, but determined to stop him. When Jin realizes what's going on, some of Jisung's other men have started firing arrows directly at him. With his legs now bound to the ground, the option of evading the arrows is off the table. At that moment, Gook calls out to Jin from the sidelines and tosses him a dagger. Jin immediately catches it and uses it to create a lightning wave that deflects all the arrows in a strike. He gives Gook a nod of validation and then flash steps his way to Jisung. He lunges the dagger at full speed, causing it to barely graze his neck as well. He then states that normally he doesn't use a blade, but he decided to make an exception just for him. Jisung yells at his remaining men to attack Jin, but they're all too frozen in their tracks to make a move. While Jin confronts Jisung and attempts to deliver the finishing blow, Jisung shields himself with a young woman he had forcefully taken into his chambers earlier. Jin is then forced to deflect the attack to protect the woman. After rescuing her safely from his hand, Jin instructs the woman to stay back while he slowly advances towards Jisung. Jisung, now in a pathetic state, crawls on the floor while pleading for his dear life. He promises Jin he has a lot of money, offering to give it all to him, but Jin is not interested in anything he has to offer. As a matter of fact, he even gets more triggered at the fact that Jisung thinks he can easily attach a price tag to the cost of a life. He kicks him into the floor and digs his hand into his heart, killing him instantly. In the aftermath of the battle, while Jin and Gook exit the premises with the young woman the following morning, Gook volunteers to escort her since they're headed in the same direction. Jin, who happens to be going the opposite way, agrees and leaves immediately. When he leaves, the lady identifies Gook, even with his disguise still on, and expresses her gratitude. She promises to serve him a bottle of top-grade rice wine when next he stops by the sweet scent. But he tells her there'll be no need, as he wasn't the one who rescued her in the first place. He also adds that he won't be stopping by the pleasure quarters anymore, as he's equally working on becoming a changed person. When Jin arrives back home, he gets served an exquisite breakfast along with the twins, who wonder if it's okay for them to be treated that well. Jin tells them they can eat as much as they want now and don't have to hold back anymore. While they eat, Jin's mind can't help but wander back to how careless he had gotten during his fight the previous night. He thinks to himself that if he's really going to protect the merchant group and stand against unknown magic users, then he's going to have to get way stronger. But training alone isn't enough to give him the kind of strength he seeks. One of the servants interrupts his deep thinking, handing him some packages that were delivered to the base for him. On one of the boxes, Jin finds a note from Guong, informing him about how he had stopped by a tavern after their previous encounter and taken only one drink. Although this doesn't seem like a big deal, but considering his previous status as a chronic alcoholic, it's a lot of progress. Guong states further in the note that Jin's father had asked him to drop off a package for him the previous day, but he spaced out and forgot to hand it over. Opening the box, Jin sees some century roots which look like they've been aged for at least 400 or 500 years. Century roots are special elixirs that help modify the abilities of the user. Jin intends to use it to raise his White Lightning 10-phase art to the 5th level. On the other box, he finds a note from Lee Seong-min, the head of Taiho Trading Company, one of the wealthiest firms in all of the Central Plains. Apparently, Jin's father had asked Seong-min for a favor, and due to the cordial trust both agencies have built over the years, he responded immediately. When Jin opens the box, he is blown out of this world to see a pure void stone milk potion. The potion consists of a combination of elixirs that martial artists only get to dream about. It's so rare that the only things that could compare are 1000-year spirit fruit, moon elixir flower, and 10,000-year snow ginseng, which are all almost impossible to obtain. The pure voidstone milk is so rare that even in Jin's past life, he only ever had a few drops. He hands the twins a piece each of the century roots, asking them to use it wisely. He then instructs them to guard his room as he intends to lock in and circulate his chi. The twins then inform him that Hua Ian had equally stacked tons of elixir for him before his arrival, making Jin conclude that, indeed, money is a good thing. About 2 hours later, Jin puts his body under rigorous chi circulation training after consuming century roots. Due to the level of training and his current body, he feels some kind of heat building up within him. Thankfully, he had taken the right procedures to strengthen his body before the training, or else his body would melt from the heat. Even with his strengthened body, Jin tries to suppress the heat, but the more he tries, the more it rages. He then decides to push it further, causing an energy surge in his room. At the end of the procedure, Jin confirms that he has now gotten to the 5th lightning stage. Next, he consumes the stone milk potion to further his training, despite the risk it poses. Absorbing the potion is equivalent to mixing water with sand, molding it into a bowl, and then tossing it into a furnace. The bowl is almost guaranteed to crack in the process, but if it manages to endure it, it will become stronger than ever. Jin immediately meets himself in the spiritual energy plane of the stone milk potion, so he decides to give it his all. 7 days later, Hua Ian gets worried that he hasn't heard from his brother since he began the energy circulation a week earlier, so he heads to his chambers. On getting there, he is blocked by the twins, who state that they are on strict orders not to let anyone in. Suddenly, an explosion occurs from Jin's room as he walks out slowly, but something seems to be different about him. His eyes are now glowing, with some visible veins popping out of his body. Hua Ian immediately likens it to chi deviation, so he and the twins immediately head over to reprimand Jin before anything dangerous happens. While Hua Ian and the twins try to hold him down, Jin gets up casually and proceeds to leave. They ask where he's headed, but Jin simply replies that it's hot and that he's going somewhere to cool off for a bit. When he leaves, Hua Ian wonders how his brother can be feeling hot on such a clear day. He knows something is wrong, but doesn't want to intrude, so he lets his brother be. Meanwhile, Jin, who is in a terrible state from the fusion, hops through the roofs of the street like a ninja. His unripe body, which was unable to fully harmonize with the immense power, heats up as he moves. He knows the power surge within him is impossible for him to control, and if he remains in the base for any longer, the entire street would turn into a KFC commercial. As a result, he does his best to retreat as far as he can away from the base to not endanger anybody. When he eventually makes it to the mountains, Jin releases the power into the atmosphere, causing a massive lightning wave that attracts attention from the people back in the street. Upon seeing the strike, some of them express their surprise to be seeing the huge lightning striking from the ground rather than the sky. After dispelling the power, Jin realizes that his lightning 10-phase art has gone all the way up from the 5th stage to the 8th stage. While Jin walks back home through the streets in the rain, people stare at him awkwardly, making side remarks. That's when he realizes that he's still in his pajamas. He then immediately heads into a store to purchase some clothes. After getting dressed, he attempts to pay for the clothes he bought, but the shop owner refuses to accept the payment. The shop owner explains that ever since Jin took down the Uyang clan and the people of the deity sect, the crime rate on the streets has plummeted big time, and as a result, he can now bring his kids to his shop in peace. He asks Jin to consider it as his own little way of repaying him. The man's daughters show up from a sector of the shop and hand Jin an umbrella to use, since it's still raining heavily outside. Jin accepts it gratefully, says his goodbyes, and proceeds to leave. On his way out, he looks around and confirms that, indeed, the streets are way more peaceful now. He had never been the type to care about what the streets turn out into after a fight, but now that he's noticing it, it doesn't seem all that bad. While he advances further, he notices a commotion from a distance as an individual pushes through people, trying to escape from a bunch of thugs through the streets. Chol, seeing Jin, immediately rushes over to his side, using him as a shield against the thugs. Seeing their target cupped up with Jin, the thugs get pissed, wondering who the strange individual is. Meanwhile, in the Moyong clan, an emperor's assembly is being held, and in attendance are the patriarchs of the emperor's assembly. Dogo Myong, the patriarch of the Dogo clan, appreciates Moyong Bin for organizing the meeting. Advancing further with the meeting, Moyong Bin brings up the rumors he heard about Uyang Hu losing to a merchant. The patriarchs seem rather shocked because Uyang Hu happened to be one of the more experienced martial masters of the Uyang clan. The other patriarchs point out that since Uyang Hu was the one who trespassed in the first place, the issue is beyond them. Meanwhile, Namgung Wu, the head of the emperor's assembly, who also happens to be the strongest martial artist in the world, makes fun of him for losing his life to a merchant. Meanwhile, Uyang Sang, the patriarch of the Uyang clan, gets pissed and decides that it's time to teach Jin a lesson for messing with the Uyang clan. At Jin's side, the thugs confront him, asking him to hand Chol over so he doesn't get injured from being involved in something that doesn't necessarily concern him. Jin finds out from Chol that they are members of the Crimson Reaper, an alliance of thugs who have recently been trying to take over the downtown district. Chol briefly explains that the whole issue started when he decided to dabble in the auction business. He simply went to organize some books after a while, but realized that the thugs had taken them from him. Jin turns to the men and tells them to come back later, as they're not in the mood for an unnecessary squabble. The thugs, who normally would roast him for talking down to them like that, can't help but notice something strangely oppressive about Jin, so they keep to themselves. All but the youngest thug, who clearly doesn't understand the drill. He confronts Jin, spewing all manner of crap about how they're the most feared alliance in the entire district because of their abilities. Jin gets tired of hearing him yap, so he flicks him on the head, sending him crashing into the distant walls. The rest of the group then confirms their suspicions about Jin not being a regular person. He instructs them to leave instantly if they don't want to share the same fate, and the thugs leave immediately. Later, Jin and Chol head to an inn for some food. At the inn, Chol, who has obviously been starved for days, eats his fill, ordering seconds and even thirds. After a while, Chol asks after the twins, and Jin tells him they're doing fine. He also asks if their feeding situation is not too much of a problem, but Jin reminds him that he's rich, so stuff like that means nothing to him. Chol then randomly asks how one can learn proper martial arts. When Jin asks what he means, he explains that he's just randomly wondering if he will be able to take down the Crimson Reaper's leader if he learns martial arts. Jin suggests teaching him, and Chol jumps on the idea cheerfully. Jin then clearly states that if he's going to be Chol's teacher, then it means Chol would have to follow any instruction he gives. Chol, not understanding the depth of the statement, agrees to it immediately. Jin then gives him his first instruction, asking him to bow to him in the presence of everyone in the inn. Chol hesitates for a while, stating how embarrassing it would be for him, but eventually gives in and bows. He then tells Jin that if he still doesn't teach him after the whole humiliation, he will take a dump right in front of the Yuna merchant group's gates. Jin picks up the umbrella, which was placed carefully on the ground, and does a full swing with it before returning it. When Chul finds out that that's the whole training he humiliated himself for, he gets pissed and starts throwing a tantrum. Jin smacks him with the umbrella and instructs him to pick it up with one hand and practice the swing he just performed for him. He tells him that since the umbrella was given to him as a gift, he would only be able to lend it to him till he's done with the training. He instructs him to practice the swing 100,000 times with the umbrella and bring it back when he's done. Upon hearing the numbers, Chol freaks out completely, wondering how on earth Jin expects him to practice 100,000 swings. Jin simply replies that if he cannot do it, then he's not fit enough to refer to himself as a martial artist. He grabs him by his clothes and calls him a waste of space, explaining that if he had practiced with 100,000 strikes using the same umbrella earlier, then he'd have been strong enough to take down at least half of the thugs who were attacking him with just a wooden sword. Jin talks down to him, calling him pathetic for running away like a drenched rat instead of fighting like a real man. He adds that if Chol is going to live the rest of his life so pitifully, then he might as well just die instead. Rather than picking up offense, Chol uses Jin's words as a drive. He borrows the umbrella and leaves immediately with it. While he leaves, Jin wonders if he'll really be up to the task. He then thinks to himself that since he has already promised to take care of the Crimson Reaper thugs, he might as well just act on it. Meanwhile, at the Crimson Reaper's base, their powerful leader is furious about the fact that his men couldn't carry out his orders to kill Chul. He then prepares to confront the mysterious man who is said to have intimidated his men to the extent that they disobey his orders. The Crimson Reaper finds it unbelievable that not only were his men intimidated by one man, but it was a merchant. In their defense, his men tell him about the circulating rumors they've been hearing about Jin, making him more than just a merchant. Furious, the Crimson Reaper then decides that he must see Jin for himself to understand what the fuss is all about and probably kill him along with Chul. Meanwhile, back in Jin's chambers, one of the twins equally educates him about the Crimson Reaper. He is said to be a man whose temperament is so terrible he prefers to rip his opponents apart with his bare arms. Rumor has it that the leaders of numerous clans and sects lost their lives to him, making him absorb their factions. As a result, his group has grown to be the biggest in the entire Yukwan area. Due to his power and influence, every organization in the area that he operates pays tribute money to him, and that's how Chul's auction house got affected. Hearing this, Jin realizes that if the Crimson Reaper finds out about him, the entire merchant group will suffer for it. So he decides that he will have to go there himself to handle things personally. At Yukwan Shopping District, in a pleasure house that night, something unfortunate happens as one of the workers reports to the hostess that the Crimson Reaper has done something terrible yet again. Jin arrives at the pleasure house at that same moment, so the hostess decides to welcome him. When she approaches him, she introduces herself, admitting that it's her first time seeing him in the district. She tries to brief him about their services, but Jin interrupts her, asking if the Crimson Reaper is in the building. She gets shocked at his request and wonders whether to tell him the truth or to redirect him elsewhere. Given the terrible thing the Crimson Reaper had just done, she doesn't feel the need to hide his identity anymore, so she tells him he's in the building. Jin appreciates her for speaking up and asks her to evacuate everyone from the building so they don't get caught up in what is to come. While he advances through the stairway, the hostess warns him that the Crimson Reaper is dangerous, but he tells her not to worry. Getting to the second floor, a thug asks him where he thinks he's going, but Jin ignores him completely and tries to walk past him. Pissed, the thug draws his weapon and tries to attack Jin, but Jin yanks him off the floor and sends him crashing. The ruckus draws the attention of the other thugs in the building, and they rush out to confront him. Jin asks where their leader is, but the thugs charge at him to attack him. Jin then tells them he'll find out where he is after he crushes them either way. While the thugs charge at him, he snatches their weapons and uses them to take out each of them while crashing them into the rooms in search of the Crimson Reaper. Eventually, he clears a path through the rest of the thugs and makes his way to the 5th floor, where he finally finds the Crimson Reaper. When the Crimson Reaper identifies him as the troublesome merchant, he gets excited at the fact that his prey walked up to him himself. He asks Jin if the climb all the way up wasn't too stressful, but Jin replies that stomping on his way up is his specialty. Getting down from his bed, Jin finds out that the man happens to be quite massive in size. Crimson Reaper then returns the banter, stating that looking down on people happens to be his own specialty. Jin notices a woman lying lifeless on his bed, and Crimson Reaper tells him not to worry about it, as he simply couldn't control his strength while trying to have his way with her. He then realizes how much of a monster the Crimson Reaper is. Seeing how the Crimson Reaper shows no remorse for his actions, Jin feels relieved because now he can get to crush him without feeling bad. He asks the giant how he would rather he be killed, and the Crimson Reaper mocks him, stating that he's not the first to look at him with such degrading eyes and will definitely not be the last. He then describes how he ripped apart anyone who ever stood before him with his bare hands. Meanwhile, outside the pleasure house, all the occupants of the building are seen charging out. Even the thugs storm out so as not to get caught up in the clash between the two abnormal men. While the thugs try to escape, Chol shows up in a disguise and takes out some of them while practicing his swings with the umbrella. At this point, he has gotten to 2,874 swings, but is still far off from his target. While he continues swinging, an explosion takes place in the pleasure house, alarming everyone in the area. Jin sends Crimson Reaper out of the building, crashing hard into the floor. Now surrounded by his own men, Crimson Reaper gets up, dusts his body, and uses the typical anime catchphrase, declaring that things are finally getting interesting, like he did not just get mauled over by someone half his size. He makes one of his men hand him a weapon, which he uses to attempt a deadly strike towards Jin. As expected, Jin evades the attack immediately. Crimson Reaper then changes the projectile of the weapon, causing it to swing at Jin from behind. Our MC catches it easily, forcing the big guy into a tug-of-war where he struggles severely to try to snatch his weapons back. Realizing that the troublesome merchant might be able to match even his physical strength, Crimson Reaper changes tactics immediately. Letting the weapon go, he charges immediately at Jin with the intent of using the rebound force to overthrow him. Seeing him charge at him with full force, Jin admits that his opponent is indeed sound in meteor hammer and fist techniques, and most have been trained by a true orthodox martial artist. However, he's still way too inexperienced to be taking on the Fist King. Jin deflects his attack easily and lands a clean hit on Crimson Reaper's stomach, causing him to scream in pain. Determined not to lose, Crimson Reaper decides to go all out, charging at Jin like a wild beast, but Jin grabs him easily by the throat and flings him over, crashing him heavily into the ground. Crimson Reaper can't help but wonder just what kind of person Jin must be to effortlessly overpower him even at his strongest. While pinning him to the ground, Jin teases the big guy, asking him what it feels like now to be looked down upon. He tells Crimson Reaper that he normally wouldn't have fought so furiously, but seeing how he treated people around him like scum, he deserved it. Forgetting his place, Crimson Reaper still tries to run his mouth, but Jin is not having it. He strikes him with his white lightning art technique, starting from the second stage and increasing it rapidly until he gets to a stage where a huge lightning fist appears in the sky above them. Jin then uses the attack to finish things, disintegrating Crimson Reaper's entire body into nothing but ashes. With the big guy gone, he directs his rage at the small fry, asking them who authorized them to start collecting tribute in the area in the first place. He challenges them to a fight, and the thugs are dumb enough to throw their lives away by charging at him. While Jin takes down the rest of the thugs, the people of the town wonder who he is. They make side comments, wondering if the strange man has come to bring them liberation, or has simply come to take down the Crimson Reapers so he can start collecting the tribute now. Chul, who happens to hear their comments in the middle of his training, stops and tells the villagers that Jin is not that kind of person. He adds that Jin is a young merchant who apparently is very wealthy, so he doesn't even need their money for anything. Chul then goes back to his training, counting loudly as he resumes swinging the umbrella. The villagers just wonder if Chul is alright mentally. The whole battle serves as an inspiration for Chul. While he watches Jin obliterate the ops, he makes up his mind that he must get stronger. When Jin arrives back home the following morning, he meets Hua Ian in his room, who asks where he has been. Jin casually mentions that he went out to drink, but the bloodstains on his body tell a different story. When Hua Ian asks about the blood, Jin deflects the conversation yet again, simply stating that it's not his blood. Hua remarks that the elixirs they were gifted from the other merchant groups proved to be really effective, and he is considering preparing a gift for them to express their gratitude. Specifically, what has been giving him a bit of stress is thinking about what they can give to Merchant Taiho for his priceless gift. Jin mentions that repaying him with money or goods wouldn't be appropriate because of the kind of priceless gift they were given. Instead, he suggests that they form a merchants alliance, not only with him, but with the other merchant groups as well. He remarks that some of the groups that provided them with the elixirs lack their own defense forces, so he believes that forming an alliance and offering everyone protection will be repayment enough. Hua voices out his discomfort with the idea, stating that it's too big a plan, but Jin tells him they don't have to start grand yet. Rather, they can just include the Taiho Merchant Group and the Westwind Escort Establishment for the meantime. Hua asks what they're meant to do about the rules and membership fees, but Jin instructs him to keep the rules simple and refrain from collecting any fees for the time being. He also decides that the purpose of the alliance will be to protect the lives of the merchants. He states that it'd also help create a system for quick communication among the merchants so problems can be solved easily. Hua asks what they'll do in a situation that the Taiho Merchant Group's escort warriors can't handle. Jin, understanding the drill, knows that if something like that happens to a big merchant group like Taiho, then it only means martial arts groups from the underworld of the Jianghu are involved. He states that if anything like that happens, then he will get involved personally. Since the elixir they gave him tremendous strength, he doesn't see anything wrong with using the strength to fight on their behalf as well. For the name of the alliance, Hua suggests calling it the Great Merchants Alliance, but the word alliance doesn't really resonate with Jin, so he changes it to the Great Merchants Association. The brothers are shortly interrupted by a guard who reports that Lord Ouyang has suddenly arrived with his sons. Meanwhile, in the main hall where they are received, Ouyang Sang reminds his sons why they came, stating that they must each fight Jin to get revenge for what he did to their clan. He wants them each to win against him in fair duels so they can bag 3 victories and restore pride to their clan's name. Two of the three sons decide that they'll be going against him barehanded, but the last one declares that he'll be using his blade to add to his battle confidence. Shortly after, the twins approach the Uyongs in the hall, telling them Jin has invited them to the annex. While they lead the Uyongs can't help but wonder how and why Jin has such huge servants. When they arrive at the annex, the Uyongs meet Jin, who welcomes them like he's expecting a fight. They greet him immediately, each son introducing themselves. Sang apologizes for showing up unannounced, stating that he only came to personally witness Jin's strength. Sensing the flattery, Jin accepts the challenge, asking him to dictate the rules for the duel. Sang then tells him it'll be a simple clash in a ring where leaving the ring, falling unconscious, or becoming unable to move will be counted as defeat. Jin agrees to the terms, and they begin the duel immediately. His first opponent is Uyang Myong, the second son swordsman. Sang smirks to himself, imagining how Jin would beg for mercy when Myong is down with him. When the start signal is given, Myong can't help but shake off the feeling that, rather than a merchant's son, it feels more like he's facing a warrior hardened in the Jianghu. He gets extremely nervous as a result. Jin asks why he's not drawing his sword, and Myong replies that he'll do as he pleases and that it's none of Jin's business. Next thing he knows, he completely blacks out as Jin sends him out of the ring, crashing into a distant wake with only a single punch. The rest of the Uyongs then get completely shocked, confirming that they're not dealing with a normal person. After defeating the first contestant, Jinyeon tells him he should have drawn his sword. The younger son walks into the arena with his sword already drawn. He plans not to hold back and have a very good match with Jin. As soon as they commence, he puts on a serious look and swings his sword very accurately at Jin. However, Jin evades the attacks and notes that the second son is really suited to the sword. To the man's surprise, Jin parries all his sword strokes with the back of his hand. He reads through the attacks like a book and then fires a lightning-charged attack of the third phase. Utilizing White Lightning 10-phase art, Jin clobbers the young master with a lightning roar. Shocked, the Uyang in-law sees how Jin easily folded the younger master. The second person who was folded first then asks if they shouldn't end the spar, since if they are all defeated it'll cause a huge uproar. Still, Shin refuses as he leaps into the arena. He introduces himself as a martial arts trainer in the area of palm strikes. He takes a stance and asks Jin if he'll spar once with him. Surprised, Jin happily obliges as he notes Shin looks decently strong compared to the other two. Within seconds, they create shockwaves with their fists, and Jin goes on defense. Seeing that Jin hasn't been attacking, Shin decides to show him one of his moves. He creates a whirlwind of crushing palm strikes and charges right at Jinyeon. Jin simply evades the attack and tells Shin that his movements are too big, even though they aren't terrible. He grabs Shin's leg and slams him into the ground while saying it was a good match. After the match, Jinyeon looks at the Uyang Lord and wonders why he looks so displeased since it's just a duel. The old man, who brims with fury, feels insulted because the merchant group's heir defeated his faction once again. He examines Jinyeon and admits that there's no one he can call from his own clan to take Jin on. As a man who wants to save his face, he curses under his breath after realizing that not only will the pride of the Rulers Association be trampled on, but his clan will also be ridiculed endlessly. The Uyang head exhales, and he asks Jin to walk with him. Shortly afterwards, while taking a stroll in the town, Sang calls the place peaceful, and he says the Unha merchants must have many suppliers in town. The man stops beating around the bush and asks Jin alone to join the Rulers Association as an individual martial artist. Sang promises the Rulers Association will protect the Unha merchant group. The Ruler Association is an organization left by 4 great clans, the Dogo, Himen, Namgung, and Moyong clans. In actuality, they are a group that left the Murim Alliance because the Murim Alliance only focused on having 9 great sects as its core. Jin learns that the reason Sang is so obsessed with saving face is that he just recently joined the Rulers Association. To confirm his guess, Sang tells Jin of how his clan has been spreading rumors about him everywhere, and thanks to that, his reputation was ruined. He then asks Jin once more to join him in the Rulers Association to help him restore his honor. The plan is to ensure Yuna is still within the association's grasp and Jin is directly under Sang. Jin pauses for a bit but then asks him what will happen if he refuses. Sang tries to convince him not to, reminding him how much they'd make if they worked together. Still, Jin refuses, saying he doesn't lack money and he's just being offered the seat of an ordinary martial artist. With that, Jin walks away and tells him to end the conversation if it doesn't involve dueling. Left with no other choice, Saeng threatens him, asking if he wishes to see the entire Unha merchant group slaughtered. He brags about his clan's strength and how they can not only just act, but also spare him and brand him as a public enemy of the martial world. The clan head confidently boasts and asks Jinyeon if he's sure he's ready to make the Rulers Association his enemy. All of a sudden, Jin stops him mid-speech and threatens him back, asking if he wants to be unalived right there and if Saeng wants him to wipe out the Uyang clan. Jin continues, informing Saeng that he can completely shift the blame to the man's eldest son. Jang smiles at him and notes that Jinyeon has said the vilest thing he's ever heard in his life. He then unleashes a poisonous gas while yelling at Jin to save his words after he has proven his strength. Sang marvels, as he notes the technique he used on Jin is what he had practiced to use against the leaders of the 4 great clans. To his surprise, he sees the poison dissipating as if Jin's lightning is eating into it. Jin tightens the grip on the man's throat and he throws him to the ground. He then tells Sang that he's weaker than he had expected. The result could have been because of Jin's white lightning 10-phase art reaching the 8th phase. Sang then taunts Jin to kill him if he has the balls to do so, reminding him that he'll be seen as a public enemy. He asks Jin what he'll do about the association's backing, and wonders who loses in the end. To his surprise, Jin tells Sang he loses. He holds the old man's head and promises to make sure he regrets his words for the rest of his life. Shortly after, Jinyeon drags Sang back to the compound by the hair. The sons see him and ask Jin what he's doing. Jin silences them and confirms for them that Sang is alive. He orders his servant to set up a carriage outside and then explains to Sang's sons, who want to know the reason why their father is being treated like dirt. Jin tells them that Sang threatened him, saying that if he didn't help, he would annihilate the Unha merchant group and frame him as the culprit. He informs them that he'll go to the Rulers Association to report the matter. He then orders Uyang's guards to serve as witnesses to the incident. Shin then tells Jin that the Rulers Association doesn't have an official headquarters, but they meet at the homes of the 4 great clan rulers. Based on the location of their houses, Jin determines that the Moyong clan is the closest to his merchant group. With that, he commends the twins and the guards to watch Sang's sons and ensure they don't act foolishly. He also orders Hua to organize the matter and report it to the Murim Alliance. After dishing out orders, he commands the Uyang guards to follow him to the Moyong clan. Later that evening, on their way, Sang wakes up, and once he learns that they are heading to the Moyong clan estate, he asks one of his guards to get him some water. The guard talks back while looking at Jin that Jin wouldn't permit that. Jin looks at the other guard close to him and asks him why he's acting so cold. He grabs his head and asks him if he isn't a warrior of the Uyang clan, but an assassin. He zaps the man to death and then tells the other guards who heard the man's last cry not to stop. Jin then turns to the other guard inside and asks him if he is an assassin. But the guard affirms and tells him he's from the Gold and Silver Assassin sect. Jin then asks Uyang how much he hired the men, and the man reluctantly tells him it's 800 Nyang. After confirming it from the assassin, Jinyeon corrects the man who believes the money is worth the normal amount that his life is also included in the fee. Jin enlightens him that Sang had planned to unalive him as soon as he carried out his job since Sang didn't want to dirty his hands. He makes fun of the assassin and claps for him, calling the assassin and his partners bastards. He counts the guards riding the carriage, plus the one alive inside. Later that evening, they arrive at the Moyong clan estate, and they are welcomed by Moyong Bin. Jinyeon looks at him and is surprised that he isn't meeting with Moyong Chu, Bin's father. Concerned, Bin asks Sang what's wrong and why Jin is dragging him like a criminal. Seeing that Sang isn't going to explain, Jin tells Bin everything. He also showcases the assassins Sang had hired. Bin sees it's a very serious matter, and he asks Jin what his intention is for coming over. He guesses that Jin fears retaliation and has come to reveal the truth. Jin smiles at him and asks Bin what he would do if he were in his shoes. Bin internally notes that he would have chosen to unalive his foe, but the person being Sang would have the Uyang clan and all of Murim looking at him. Sang loses it and blames Bin for mocking him alongside other patriarch heads due to one of his men's losses against Jin. He yells at Bin, saying he should help him out, and if he does, he'll do anything he asks. Patriarch Bin quickly knocks out Sang, silencing him from disgracing himself any further. He then orders his men to imprison the assassins and keep them alive. Bin then apologizes to Jin for Sang's unlawful behavior. He then offers him a meal, and Jin agrees to it. A while later, while they eat, Bin silently observes Jin, wondering how a merchant's son was able to defeat the Uyang clan patriarch. He then tells Jin that he plans to deliver Sang to the Murim Alliance, and that way the resentment falls upon them rather than his own clan. Jin agrees to the plan, and then asks Bin if his father, Moyong Chu, has retired from the world of martial arts. Bin finds it surprising that Jin doesn't know that his father has been missing for over a year. He then tells Jin about how they've been searching for him but haven't found him. Jin realizes that it was around that time he came reincarnated into his body, so Moyong Chu had likely died just like him. Jin then suggests the possibility that Chu had clashed with the demonic faction. Bin thinks about it deeply, but then remembers the rumors of the demon faction being silent for over 20 years. He refuses to believe the possibility because if the demonic faction had risen, everywhere wouldn't be quiet. Also, he finds it strange for them to target only his father. Jin recalls how he was also jumped despite not having any ties with them. So he asks Bin how his father would fare if he got jumped by several swordsmen. Bin tells him it would be a brutal fight, but his father wouldn't lose. Jin then tweaks the question a little by asking if the swordsman Chu were to face had a blade-proof body. He remembers how some of those he fought survived being struck by the 9th phase lightning energy. This was Jin in his prime, using his power to the maximum, and it felt unnatural for the men to be able to tank such hits. He believes that if such men teamed up with people with strange sorcery,
then the only ones who can fight against them are those who exist beyond the heavens. Jin broods deeply and wonders why the demonic faction moves in secrecy, and he wonders what they are after. Meanwhile, somewhere else outside a cave, a heavenly demon tells the Sword Demon that they've found the Sword King. The Sword Demon praises him and then orders his men that it's time to hunt. Jin asks Bin to tell him what he knows about the other top masters. Bin then answers, starting from the Blade Emperor, with whom he was still in a meeting not too long ago. He tells Jin about the way the Blade Emperor had made fun of Ouyang Sang when he found out how someone from his clan had been humbled by a merchant. As a matter of fact, it was his mockery that agitated Sang to do what he tried to do to the Unha merchant group. Bin states that he finds it really weird that the Blade Emperor got amused by the Ouyang clan's humiliation, as he's not the type to take interest in such trivial things. He tells Jin about the Sword God, who he heard went into a closed-door training about half a year earlier. He also finds it weird because for a senior belonging to the heavens like him, he wonders what more martial skills he could be honing. He talks about the Sword Emperor, who is said to have been wandering about without a fixed abode, and as a result, nobody knows anything about his current state. He tells Jin about the last time he met with the Sword Emperor and told him about his missing father, but he has not heard anything from him ever since. Next, he talks about the Sword King, who is long retired and has devoted the rest of his life to training his young disciples. Bin then shifts his discussion to the Fist King, causing Jin to flinch. He talks about how the Fist King is the kind of difficult man that even his father had trouble dealing with. As to his current state now, Bin remarks that he's probably roaming the world, smashing apart some unorthodox faction or causing trouble like he normally does. Jin then realizes that not many people are aware of his death. Bin states that the Fist King isn't someone one can easily get close to, prompting Jin to ask him why. Bin then recaps the history of how he often beats up not only his juniors, but his seniors as well whenever they displease him. Jin also states that he has a habit of unaliving every single heretic who comes across him. On the other hand, he states that the Fist King is indeed a fearless man who keeps to his words. He adds that even with all this, the Fist King lives a lonely life. Hearing this, Jin comments under his breath that he's not all that lonely. After dinner, while Jin stands to leave, Bin suggests that he visit the Murim Alliance to testify personally against Ouyang Sang, and he agrees to it. The following morning, still at the Moyong clan, Bin introduces Jin to Baek Hangyeon, a member of the Murim Alliance, who will be escorting him. Before they take off, Jin asks Bin to look after his merchant group when he's gone, and Bin assures him that it's already being taken care of, as he has already sent some of his warriors to guard the group. Jin asks Bin another favor, telling him to investigate the Silverblood assassins with the rest of the Emperor's assembly, and Bin agrees. Jin then tells Bin that his expectation while coming to the Moyong clan was to cause an uproar, but seeing how nicely Bin treated him, he has changed his mind. He then immediately takes off with Baek as they hop through the woods like ninjas. After traveling for a few days in the woods, Baek imagines what kind of person Jin is, as they've never really engaged in a solid conversation all through. While they head to a civilized area, Baek bumps into a man whom he immediately identifies as the Immoral Guest, a well-known enemy of the martial world. He then immediately begins to pursue him through the streets, leaving Jin behind. Baek eventually catches up to him but runs into two other handicapped men. He then realizes that it was all a trap. Judging by their handicaps, Baek identifies the men as some rebels the Murim Alliance chief had taken down a while back. Seeing their rage, he realizes that they've come seeking revenge against the members of the Alliance. While the men prepare to jump, Baek Jin shows up behind them, scaring them completely. He then tells them his intention to teach them a good lesson. Meanwhile, back at the Una merchant group, Chol, finding out about Jin's journey to the Murim Alliance, is shocked. He throws a tantrum so the guards are forced to throw him out. Turns out he has finally completed the 100,000 swings and is now ready for the next training. He decides he has to go to the Murim Alliance as well for his next lecture. With Jin double-crossing the offenders, the Immoral Guest tries to excuse himself, but Jin rage-baits him, calling him a lustful swordsman and asking where he's going. As expected, the Immoral Guest falls for the bait, threatening to teach Jin a lesson. Jin puts him on pause for a bit, asking Baek if he can kill wanted men. Baek replies that since they've been officially declared as public enemies of the Murim Alliance, he's allowed to execute them. Hearing this, Jin gets excited as he smiles mischievously. Even Baek remarks that this is his first time seeing Jin smile since they started traveling together. While the ops get agitated and charge at Jin to attack him, the Immoral Guest flings some daggers at him. Jin immediately catches the daggers midair, lunges himself high into the sky, and tosses them at the two handicapped men, unaliving them instantly. The Immoral Guest literally pisses himself because he knows Jin intentionally avoided hitting him, or else he'd be in a different place right now. Jin asks him what exactly he did to become a wanted criminal, and the Immoral Guest finds his question disrespectful for some reason. He instinctively charges towards Jin with some kind of enhanced physical attack, but Jin punches his hand into the ground immediately, causing him tremendous pain. Now realizing how cooked he is, the Immoral Guest pleads with Jin to spare his life.
He surrenders himself to be taken as a prisoner by the Alliance and also promises to snitch on the other hidden offenders as long as Jin spares his life. Jin, however, finishes him off with a punch, making it clear that his surrender is futile. Later, he and Beck decide to head to an inn to get something to eat. Over the meal, Beck remarks that watching Jin fight has cleared all the doubts he had about him earlier. He claims to have heard lots of rumors about his unmatched physical abilities, but didn't know how true they were. Now seeing him in action has helped him confirm those rumors. He promises to attest to his strength to the superiors, and Jin appreciates him. He then suddenly comes on to Jin, asking if he'd like to consider joining the Murim Alliance. He goes further to explain that, unlike the other alliances, the Murim Alliance doesn't really pay much attention to background, and what matters there mainly is individual skill. He believes that even though the pay is way less compared to other organizations, someone with Jin's level of skill will be able to make a lot of gain. He cites an example with the Rulers Association, which is built entirely on clan influence, where outsiders stand no chance of succeeding. He adds that as a result of their hoarding, if a real battle were to occur, the association would scatter like autumn leaves. They are suddenly interrupted by a powerful-looking man in the inn, who calls Beck out for disrespecting him. Beck immediately does what's morally right, apologizing to the man and asking for his name. The man answers that his surname is Autumn Wind and his first name is Autumn Leaves. They then understand where the whole misunderstanding set in. Given that he has already apologized, Beck resumes his discussion with Jin. He remarks that the strange man must have come for the Dragon Phoenix tournament, which is around the corner. He asks if Jin would be participating, as it would be a good medium to build fame, but Jin tells him he has no interest. Beck then mentions that the winner will be awarded a super rare elixir, prompting Jin to change his mind instantly. Surprised, Beck asks him why he suddenly changed his mind, then Jin told him to have spoken up sooner about the elixir. Later that evening, after their meal, they prepared to leave the inn. While at it, Autumn Leaves pushes Beck out of his way and looks down on him, asking why he's dragging his feet in front of the gates. He makes fun of Beck's alliance, which he once called the Smear Alliance, but then calls it the Slow One. Beck gets pissed but doesn't say a thing, realizing that Autumn Leaves still holds a grudge over the earlier incident. He then teases the petty man by using his name as a reference, indicating how they plan to run to the Murim Alliance headquarters. They take off instantly, creating a huge dust, and it pisses off Autumn Leaves and his attendants. He gets mad and instructs Unseol to follow them instead to the headquarters while he showcases true mobility arts to the men. Instantly, he takes off like a jet, and his men praise him, asking him to put Jin and Beck in their place. Unseol, on the other hand, wonders why he's fired up. Shortly, that same evening, the trio gets closer to the headquarters while using their light footwork. As expected, Jin outpaces the men, and he arrives first. Beck wonders why the men are so fast. To his surprise, Autumn Leaves goes ahead, so he buckles up and gives it his all. They go in neck and neck, and Beck falls to the ground upon arrival. He then asks Jin who arrived first, believing he was ahead of Autumn Leaves. The two nearly argue, but the alliance leader, Yu Jonghan, Ji, shows up and asks them what the point is. After all, Jin was the one who came in first. Upon seeing Yu Jonghong, the alliance leader, the men salute him immediately, each introducing themselves to him. Surprisingly enough, Yu already recognized Jin as the oldest son of the Yunya merchant group. He greets him, specifically asking if he has also come to participate in the Dragon Phoenix tournament. When Jin shares his intent to participate, Yu decides to walk him back to his chambers. While they leave, Autumn Leaves, who also happens to have heard a lot about Jin, tells him to watch out for him during the tournament. On their way, Yu tells Beck how he was the slowest to arrive, which surprises him because he thought he had arrived just slightly before Autumn Leaves. Yu then replies that although what he's saying might be true, it still doesn't count because while he was struggling, Autumn Leaves was barely putting any effort into the race. He believes he was trying to conserve his energy for the tournament, or rather, conceal his abilities from his potential opponents. Jin also teases Beck, stating that that's basic knowledge everyone should know. Yu then leads them into the Grand Hall, which he makes everyone evacuate, apart from Jin. While the people evacuate, Jin thinks about how long it has been since he stood before Yu face to face, even in his past life. Yu is a man of influence and respect, whose fame and influence are second only to the three divine stars. From a previous battle against the demonic sect, Yu had elevated himself to a point where he became the one controlling the entire Orthodox faction. When they eventually become alone, Yu turns to Jin and suddenly shocks him with an unexpected question. He asks if Jin is a disciple of the Fist King. Jin freezes completely, wondering where the alliance leader got such an idea. Yu then likens his fighting patterns to 4 different well-known clans. Out of the 4 clans, one deviated to the way of the sword and another deviated to the way of the blade, leaving them with only 2 clans. Now, among the remaining 2 clans, the predecessor of one of them quit martial arts after sustaining a terrible injury. The Fist King then happens to be a warrior from the last clan, proving them to be the only clan that operates with that fighting technique. Impressed, But not wanting to disclose his identity, Jin admits that he's indeed a disciple of the Fist King. Yu asks him how the Fist King is doing now, but he answers that he has lost all forms of connection to him and that he has suddenly disappeared just like the former head of the Moyong clan. Yu finds it really concerning that the mighty figures of the martial world suddenly began to vanish. He suspects that it could be the involvement of the demonic sect. He remarks that if the demonic sect rises again, then they might have to combine forces to stop them yet again. Yu mentions the time in history when the three divine stars had to come together to fight just one grandmaster of the demonic sect. The fact that the three divine stars had to come together to take down just one man still sounds pretty disturbing. Yu states that if at all the grandmaster left any descendants, they should be around Jin's age as well. So he beckons on Jin to do his best to become overwhelmingly and selfishly strong because of the fate he may later face. He tells Jin not to worry about his squabble with the Uyang clan and that he will personally see that he gets imprisoned for his actions, for messing with the disciple of the Fist King. While Jin heads out of the hall, he gets lost in thought, imagining the kind of fate that lies ahead of him. Yu told him that after the brutal battle against the Grandmaster, the Orthodox had won and chopped him up into different pieces before burning him and scattering his ashes. But for some reason, Jin can't help but feel uneasy about the whole situation. He runs into Beck, who offers to take him somewhere outside the Alliance to lodge. When they arrive at the lodge, they are shocked to meet Chul there waiting for them. Chul reveals that he has completed the 100,000 swings Jin asked him to do and has now come for a new assignment. He's pretty determined to become a martial artist, calling himself the Venom Fox. Seeing how desperate Chul is for his next assignment, Jin decides to educate him further. The following morning, he makes Beck take them to a secluded training ground on the outskirts of the town. When they arrive, Beck leaves them to train on their own. Chul is shocked to see that Jin, despite being the most powerful person he knows, still intends to train. Jin tells him that he can't keep relying on his White Lightning 10-phase art, as it has its downsides as well. He intends to perfect an entirely different skill known as the Phantom Blossom Divine Art. Although the White Lightning 10-phase art focuses on powerful offensive techniques, it will not be enough to defeat the true martial masters. The Phantom Blossom Divine Art, however, focuses on exploiting the opponent's technique using a special technique known as the Phantom Reach. The Phantom Reach allows one to move distant objects or weapons without touching them, which will prove to be beneficial to a close combatant like Jin. When Jin asks how Chul feels since he completed the assessment, Chul replies that he doesn't feel all that different and that his arms just slightly got bigger. Jin then decides to take things up a notch with him. He lectures Chul that out of all the swings he practiced, only one of them is worth anything. Going further, he explains that if Chul wants to parry an attack from an opponent, he has to use the most efficient of all the 100,000 trajectories or else he will die. He explains that only with constant practice and refinement can he form a complete sequence of attacks called a basic form. Jin adds that even that is still not enough, as he will still need actual battle experience to hone his swordsmanship skills. Jin tells Chul he will not be teaching him any difficult sword art, but Chul is not satisfied with it. He considers joining a famous sect to learn their renowned sword arts, but Jin points out that even that is not enough to help him grow stronger. He explains that being stronger is far deeper since it depends on the kind of life he decides to live with his strength. Meanwhile, Yu arrives at the training ground for some personal training. But when he sees Jin lecturing Chul, he decides to stand by and watch. Jin tells Chul about the Doggo's 9 sword strike, a sword technique which is generally regarded as the greatest sword art in all of history. He adds that what most people don't know is that there's still one sword art that surpasses it. When Jin mentions the name of the technique, Chul is surprised as he has never heard of it. Jin then begins his narration about Jin Sohan, the creator of the technique. Sohan came from a traveling performer troupe. He grew up learning the sword dance, a seductive dance where women's clothes get cut off carefully with swords mid-dance. He had become so skilled with the art of using a sword to avoid hurting the people he danced with. Along the line, Sohan lost it and started using his skills to kill people. In that process, he surpassed Doggo's 9 sword strikes without even realizing it. Jin then uses the story to explain to Chul that how strong he becomes as a martial artist doesn't just rely on the strength he possesses or the amount of training he undergoes, but the kind of life he decides to live. For some reason, Chul gets excited. He hands Jin the now tattered umbrella and asks him to tell him the next step for his training. With the umbrella, Jin performs a different kind of technique and asks Chul to practice it. Chul, still excited, states that rather than 100,000 swings, he'll be attempting 1,000,000 swings this time. Yu, who has been watching from the sidelines, identifies the technique as the tri-sword technique. He's impressed that not only does Jin know the technique, but he replicates it perfectly, even as a bare fist user. He then decides to prepare a gift just to appreciate them for keeping him entertained. Later that day, during their training, Jin unlocks the Phantom Reach, so he uses it to train carefully. Yu confronts Jin and Chul during their training and asks for a word. Identifying him as the alliance leader, Chul immediately introduces himself. Yu notices a scar on Chul's face, which looks like a sword wound, so he asks about it. Chul, however, replies that it wasn't a sword, but rather a dagger that caused the injury. Intrigued, Yu asks about it, so Chul tells him how he sustained the injury from an angry customer when he still used to run a gambling den. To his surprise, the Alliance leader reveals a scar he also has on his body, telling Chul about a similar scar he has on his arm. In his case, he had rescued his father from being jumped by a group of drunk men in his brewery several years ago and had sustained a permanent scar as well. He instructs Chul to wear it as a crown, as it'll serve as a reminder to him, and it'll help him never to forget. Noticing the tattered umbrella with Chul, Yu asks if that's actually his weapon, and Chul tells him how he borrowed it from Jin to train. Yu then decides to lend him his own umbrella to aid his training as well. When Chul collects the umbrella, he notices how heavy it is. Yu then explains that it's made from steel and black iron, so its weight and durability will make it a standard weapon. Chul wonders if he deserves such a gift, but the old man assures him that he can keep it. Before he leaves, he tells Chul to stop beating himself up about his past, and that since he has made up his mind to change his ways and refine his skills with martial arts, he's on the right path. Yu then turns to leave, telling the men how he looks forward to seeing them again. When he leaves, Jin suggests that they go grab lunch, but Chul asks him to go ahead, as he still has some training to do. He is still pretty much blown away by the fact that the Alliance leader himself gifted him a durable weapon. A few days pass and it's now the eve of the tournament. Due to the number of people who sign up for the tournament, contestants eventually get exhausted just waiting for the preliminary rounds. As a result, the people have made it a tradition to hold an Eve festival where the people are allowed to challenge each other. It is considered effective, as anyone who loses a fight during the Eve festival would automatically be disqualified from the main fight the following day. One of the men notices Chul and, seeing him as an easy target, challenges him to a duel. As expected, Chul accepts the challenge. While he approaches the fighting arena, people make fun of his weapon, which is an umbrella, getting on his nerves. He introduces himself and tells the men they have no idea who gifted him the umbrella, likewise what it can do. He also goes on to brag about how he has completed 100,000 swings, as well as the tri-sword technique under the tutelage of his master. But the men clown him, calling him immature. While the opponent approaches him, Chul tells him he doesn't really care much about the tournament, but will in no way run from a challenge. Jin, however, watches closely from a nearby building, curious to see just what his pupil is capable of. When the duel begins, Chul charges at the opponent, determined to end the battle with just a single strike, but when he swings his umbrella, he slightly misses the opponent's face. That's when he realizes that the umbrella you gifted him happens to be shorter than the one he used to train. The opponent, who was scared initially, confirms that Chul can't even control his weapon properly, so he decides to turn the tide. All of a sudden, the whole audience is in shock as they watch Chul shamelessly running away from his opponent. When Chul realizes how short his umbrella is, he starts running around the ring, making his opponent chase him while the people make fun of him. When his opponent gets tired of chasing him around the ring, he lunges his spear at his legs, tripping him over. He then asks Chul to get up so he can teach him a lesson. Chul, however, teases the man, telling him to pick a side because a few seconds earlier he tripped him over and now he's asking him to get back up. The man gets enraged and uses the back of his spear to launch an attack at Chul, but he catches it. Turns out it was all a trap Chul had prepared. With the man's weapon now stuck, Chul attempts another swing with his umbrella, but it's still too short to even graze the man. Making fun of him for another failed attack, the man snatches his spear back and this time begins to beat Chul to a pulp with it. Even the audience remarks about how one-sided the duel is going. While getting beaten up, Chul sees Jin from the corner of his eye and realizes how embarrassing it must be to watch his student get mauled in a public space after acting all cocky. He immediately remembers the Alliance leader's words about him changing from his old ways and becoming a refined martial artist, so he glimmers up. His opponent, however, gets tired of the fact that he keeps standing no matter how much he's beaten down, so he decides to end things for good this time. With the sharp end of his spear, he charges at Chul, prepared to unalive him, but Chul barely dodges the attack, causing the man to lose his balance. He then thanks the man for closing the distance and finally giving him a chance to show him what he's capable of. He swings the umbrella and takes out the man with so much force that the stage cracks. Chul rejoices at the feeling of his first victory, feeling grateful to Jin for training him. While the majority of the audience wonders how Chul was able to take down his opponent with just a single swing from an umbrella, some other potential opponents decide to challenge him again. They tell him he was only lucky and would like to test his fluke. While they try to climb onto the ring, Jin shows up suddenly, saying it's his turn to enjoy the Eve festival. When the men see him, they feel some kind of pressure they've never felt before, so they begin to reconsider their actions. They then suddenly get saved by Hua Un while Autumn leaves, who tells them it's best to reserve their strength for the main tournament, when in reality, he just wants there to still be people left for the tournament. He invites Jin over to his room for a drink later that night, and Jin accepts the invitation. At Yunwal's chambers before Jin arrives, Yunseol, his sister, asks him why he had stopped the duel, and he replies that he knows Jin is aiming for the championship at the tournament, so he feels there's no need to let his strength become common knowledge. He tells her about the speed contest they had. Jin had apparently been running slower intentionally while maintaining the same speed, proving him to be a man of experience. Wall states that although he had come specifically to defeat the successors of the Emperor's assembly and win the tournament, with someone like Jin among the contestants, he will be sitting this round. Yunseol wonders just how powerful Jin must be for someone as strong as her brother to glaze him this much. Yunwal, however, notices a change in his sister's facial expression, so he teases her, telling her she has a crush on Jin. Yunseol's face turns bright red as she tries to defend herself, but her brother doesn't stop there. He teases her further, remarking that since their father keeps bugging her to get married, it'd be better for her to marry the strongest merchant in the world, rather than some random influential clan. Yunseol gets so embarrassed that she rushes to the door, but when she opens it to leave, she meets Jin standing right before her. When Yunseol sees Jin at the entrance, she gets so flustered that she starts hitting her head on the door repeatedly. Jin just stands there wondering what's wrong with her. Yunwal immediately introduces his sister and apologizes for her behavior as he invites Jin in. He tells Jin that even though his sister is acting quite strangely, she happens to be one of the most likely candidates to win the tournament. A short while later, while Seol wonders why she's having drinks with them, Wall makes her give Jin a fist guard of their clan as a present. Jin accepts the present gratefully. Wall, finding out that Jin does not know the favorites for the Dragon Phoenix tournament, asks his sister to brief him. Seol tries to refuse, but Wall threatens to tell Jin about her childhood, so she agrees. According to her narration, there are many names mentioned as possible winners, but in truth, the competition only stands between two powers: the Murim Alliance and the Rulers Association. The Murim Alliance names Jin Gyeol and Lim Jiryong as their top candidates, though their participation is uncertain. The Rulers Association, however, names Dogo Han and Namgung Wi as their candidates. Seol remarks that if Dogo Ha and Namgung Wi should supposedly meet in the finals, neither of them will walk away unscathed because they're both infatuated with the same woman, Baekli Yeon. Jin recalls Baekli Yeon to be the daughter of a senior he was greatly indebted to in his past life. He is surprised to learn that the little girl from that time has now grown into a woman admired by every heir in the great clans. Seol tells Jin that Wall is also a member of the Rulers Association, but no one expects him to win because he has never fought in a public duel before. Wall is the type that finds everything bothersome. He feels he's so formidable that he sees no need to waste his time struggling. Seol adds that rumors have also been able to predict the participation of two variables, who are now widely known but are said to be powerful in this year's tournament. One of the variables is a man from the Henian sect, while the other is Jin. When Wall asks Jin how prepared he is for the tournament, he puts on the fits guard they gave him and answers that none of the people they mentioned are under his consideration. Wall gets amused at the kind of person Jin is. No matter how he tries to analyze him, he just can't detect his main martial art, his level, or whether or not he's interested in his sister like many other men. He realizes that Jin is the type of man whose focus is built entirely on becoming stronger. Meanwhile, Jin just sits there admiring the fist guard. Later, when he leaves, Seol asks what Wall intends to do about the tournament now that he has interacted with Jin, and he replies that he has made up his mind. He tells her he will not participate, but will be putting all his bets on Jin to emerge as the champion. Wall teases his sister about how the merchant she seems to be infatuated with didn't fawn over her like other guys do, but she replies that he's only pretending not to be interested. Wall then shatters her hopes, telling her that from what he observed, Jin genuinely doesn't care. He tells her about how she needs to be extremely careful when it's time for her to choose the man she'll love, as she cannot know someone truly unless she gets close to them and observes them herself. The siblings casually chat about how Jin had dismissed Namgung Wi and Dogo Han, remarking that if either of them hears about it, things could get really ugly suddenly. Little did they know that Han was in the area. He overhears their discussion and confronts them immediately to know if someone had really dared to dismiss him. Seeing Han approaching, Wall already identifies him as trouble, so he instructs his sister to head inside immediately. When Seol leaves, Wall addresses Han's question. He tells him they were just comments from a passing martial artist, but Han dismisses them, telling him a mere martial artist shouldn't dare to say those words. Apparently, Han had seen Jin while he was leaving, so he wonders if he could have been the one. Based on the rumors he had been hearing about Jin, he asks Wall, as a strategist, to tell him who he thinks is stronger between the two of them. Wall tells him not to look down on Jin, as Jin was the one who humbled the Uyang clan, but Wall gets offended by the statement. He launches an attack at Wall with his sheathed sword, and Wall deflects it easily, crashing the sword into the wall. Wall then asks Han to cut to the chase and tell him why he came. Han tells Wall that he wants him to join the tournament this year, so the win will be secure for the Rulers Association. Hearing his request, Wall bursts into laughter as he boldly declares that neither the Rulers Association nor the Murim Alliance will produce the champion this year. Intrigued, Han decides to bet 10,000 yang that the winner will come from one of the two associations, and Wall takes up his offer, increasing the bet to 30,000 yang. The men then call it a night. The following morning, at the preliminaries for the tournament, the contestants are each given a name tag and made to duel against each other. Whoever gets to acquire 3 name tags would then advance to the main round. When Jin gets there, he is given the option of using an alias on his name tag. He wonders, calling himself the Fist King, but realizes it will be disrespectful, as he is still not as strong as he was in his past life. He then decides to use Fist Warrior as his alias. Advancing further, he notices a few young masters who seem to have improved their inner energy and become quite strong. However, he remarks that inner energy isn't enough to win. He puts on his fist guard and advances towards the preliminary battleground, prepared to test out the body techniques he has refined. When he gets there, he sees the judge, an old man, disqualifying a contestant who should have qualified for the main round. The contestant attacked his already defeated opponent viciously without self-control, making him unfit to call himself a martial artist. Due to the injured contestant, an assessment spot opens up, so Jin decides to go up right away. He gets on stage and introduces himself to the old man, who is quite swept away by his manners. The old man, noticing his unique fist guard, asks about it, so Jin tells him it was a gift from Hua On Wall. He immediately assesses it and identifies it as a gauntlet made out of some rare celestial silkworm threads. Apparently, Jin didn't even know the fist guard was that valuable due to how casually the Hua siblings handed it to him. Jin then gets put in his first fight, where he's paired up against another fist user. Immediately, the duel begins. Jin lunges at the opponent and sends him flying out of the ring with a single punch, knocking him out completely. He's then given a second opponent who seems more confident than the first. When the duel begins, the opponent pours all his energy into his weapon, determined to hit Jin with it, but Jin deflects him easily and gives him the same terrible fate. At this point, he has begun to draw the attention of different powerful young masters, who assess his physical abilities. When Jin gets paired up against his third opponent, the contestant, seeing the terrible fate Jin's previous opponents faced, drops his name tag and quits immediately. With the 3 tags now complete, Jin qualifies for the next round. Even the old man remarks that in all his life, he has never seen anyone pass the preliminaries with just 2 punches. After the first day of prelims, the organizers divide the names in a way whereby fist users don't face each other in the first match. He then places Jin's tag as the first qualifier for the main event. The other judges learn that Jin was the only one who advanced to such a stage with just 2 fist strikes. While they strategize Jin's next contestant, the alliance leader walks into the room and commends them for their job well done. He notices that there aren't many qualifiers, so he praises Elder Song for filtering away contestants lacking good characters. Curious, he asks the Elder if there are cases of unorthodox factions interfering, but Song assures him that nothing of such exist. The alliance leader then commands the 3 dragon squads to track the positions of the qualifiers and support them so they don't get jumped and waste their energy fighting pointlessly. Not only that, the leader instructs the guards to lock up anyone who threatens any of the qualifiers, no matter their sect. Before leaving, he stares at everyone in the room seriously and tells them to ensure the qualifiers don't get hurt for the sake of the Murim Alliance. As soon as he leaves, the whole room relaxes and notes that the leader is frightening to behold. The next day, at the announcement of the qualifiers tournament, everyone excitedly anticipates the start of the battle. Even the Zhonghong is briefed about it, and as he prepares to go outside, he hears Chul complaining that he isn't allowed to stand with the qualifiers. The old man then remembers during his youthful days how he made a wager with his best friend Zhanwang on who would win their tournament. Currently, Zhonghong calls himself an old man as he recounts how his best friend died in the war against the demonic faction. Back then, Zhanwang urged Zhonghong to lead the battle. He still wonders to this day who was the greatest sinner during the Orong campaign. He admits that he was also a sinner, just like the demonic faction, because the members of his faction willingly gave their lives for the war. He still wishes the weak could have fled and wonders how the world of martial arts could turn into such a great war. Snapping back to the present, Zhonghong scolds himself for getting lost in such thoughts, and then wonders if the current Dragon Phoenix tournament will be the last he'll hold. As he steps outside, the crowd cheers wildly, so he waves back at them and then looks at the contestants. When he sees Jinyan and Chul, he smiles before beginning his speech. He narrates his past to them, saying that about 45 years ago, he was a ruffian who borrowed money to enter the tournament. Then, winning 1 or 2 matches wasn't in any way easy, and people occasionally died from bad luck. During his first 2 matches, Zhanwang had faced masters from different sects, and he won against them. While he won the tournament, the runner-up was his best friend, Zhanwang, who joined him in establishing the Murim Alliance. Then, Zhanwang received the Star Sword while Zhonghong got the Water Lunar Sword. Zhonghong explains that back then, there were no prizes for winning the tournament, but certain sect leaders would hand them gifts. It was when he received the Moon Lunar Sword that he had the resolve to grow stronger than ever. Because of that, in this current tournament, he'll be presenting the winner with a century-year-old Hua Jinseng from the Ma sect. Upon hearing the gift, Onlookers and participants talk about how precious and rare the elixir is, and money can't buy it. He tells them how the elixir is something the Hua sect leader can't easily hand over to his disciples to show how precious it is. He also plans to hand over John Wong's star sword to the most outstanding swordsman, while for the finest swordsman, he'll hand out a sword specially crafted by the Gu clan ironsmiths for the tournament. He reminds them how the Gu clan crafts the unforgettable swords used by the Hua sect swordsmen. Lastly, the winner will get to personally name the new sword. Zhang Hong then demonstrates by drawing out his water lunar sword and telling them how it has remained sharp through the ages. He asks the participants to remain sharp like his blade, no matter the years that pass, and they should keep an upright heart. On behalf of himself and the judges, he tells them that they are the future leaders who will replace them, and they must hold their fort. The only reason he will be handing out such precious gifts is that they are orthodox. With that, he announces the commencement of the Dragon Phoenix tournament. After the orientation, the main event finally begins, and Jin is selected in the first round to go against an infamous twin spearmaster. While they get into the ring, Jin remarks that he doesn't recall ever fighting a twin spearmaster, not even in his past life. His opponent, on the other hand, notices that Jin carries no weapon, so he automatically assumes that he'd be an easy win, since he's not really well known. When the battle begins, both contestants charge at each other with immense speed, with the spearmaster attempting an attack. But Jin dodges the attack easily, to the spearmaster's shock. The spearmaster then realizes that Jin might have the advantage in close combat, so he lunges into the air and prepares another attack. This time, he launches a really powerful twin spear strike, hoping to finish things off. But to his surprise again, Jin catches the spears with his bare hands. He then kicks the spearmaster across the ring and onto the elder judge. The judge immediately checks the spearmaster's condition and confirms that he's not badly hurt and has just fallen unconscious. With Jin declared the winner, most of the other contestants in the audience wonder how he could take down a prodigy that easily. On his way out of the ring, he runs into Chol and Wall, who congratulate him on his victory. While exchanging pleasantries, Wall casually mentions the 30,000 Nayang he had bet on Jin winning. Although the money is equivalent to the price of 3 houses, Jin assures him that he's not going to lose. Jin asks about the fist guard, trying to confirm if it was really made out of rare celestial silkworm threads from the Bakery clan, and Wall confirms it. They had gotten it from the head of the Bakery clan as a thank you gift for a sword they had gifted him on his birthday. Jin finds it shocking that they were able to present a sword impressive enough for the Bakery clan, which apparently focuses on swordsmanship. It then dawns on him that the Hua clan seems to own strange weapons, which are most likely used to hide their true strength. Shortly after, Han gets paired up against an opponent, so the 3 men pause their discussions to observe. As the rumors say, Han proves his immense sword skills as he defeats his opponents in a very short time span. As expected, the crowd erupts at his victory as they already know him as one of the likely candidates to emerge as the winner of the tournament. On his way out, Han runs into the 3 men, so he approaches them. Walking up to Wall, he pressed him about the fact that he just wasted his money, betting on Jin, but Wall ignores him. He then insults his judgment as a strategist while he walks away. Chol, on the other hand, gets pissed at his cocky behavior, so he calls him an a-hole. Jin and Wall already know he crossed the line, as Han is a very prideful person who would rather eat dust than let someone trample over him. He draws his sword immediately and prepares to teach Chol a lesson for disrespecting him.